The desperate call the world of Viridian Prime had stood for 12,000 years. Its crystal spires reached toward violet skies and its cities hummed with the energy of billions. The Korvathi people were proud, ancient, and powerful. They had never known defeat. They had never bowed to any force in the galaxy. Until now, the Devourers came without warning. They were not born. They were built, a hive of machines that consumed everything in their path, turning planets into dust and civilizations into memory. No one knew who created them or why. They simply existed to destroy. Their ships were black as the void between stars, shaped like insects with too many legs. They moved in swarms, covering the sky like a plague. Viridian Prime burned. The outer colonies fell first, then the defense stations, then the moons. The Korvathi fleet, once the pride of their empire, was shattered in 3 days. Admirals who had never lost a battle died screaming in the dark. Soldiers who had trained for centuries were erased in moments. The enemy did not negotiate. They did not speak. They only consumed. In the capital city of Nexara, the High Council gathered in their ancient chamber. The room had witnessed countless victories, celebrations of conquest, and declarations of power. Now it witnessed silence. The air was thick with smoke that drifted in from shattered windows. Outside, the sky glowed red with burning districts. The sounds of distant explosions rolled like thunder. Elder matriarch Sylvanas stood at the head of the table. Her silver robes were torn. Her face, usually calm and dignified, was lined with exhaustion. Around her sat the remnants of leadership. Generals with empty eyes, scientists with no answers, politicians with no words. "We have lost 70% of our military strength," General Kale reported, his voice hollow. "The remaining forces are scattered, disorganized. The Devourers will reach the capital within 4 days." "Our evacuation efforts?" Sylvanas asked, failing. "We have too many people and too few ships. Perhaps 10% of the population can escape. The rest—" He did not finish. Everyone knew. Silence again. Heavy and suffocating. Then Counselor Wraith spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "We must send the signal." Every head turned. Sending a distress signal to the greater galaxy was unthinkable. The Korvathi had always been the strong ones, the ones others begged for help. To admit they needed rescue was to admit weakness, to show vulnerability, to break everything they believed about themselves. "We cannot," another counselor hissed. "Our pride, our honor, is worth nothing if we are dead," Wraith interrupted. "Our children are dying in the streets. Our cities are ash. Pride does not stop the machines. Honor does not save lives." Sylvanas closed her eyes. She had led her people for 300 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had negotiated with 100 species. But she had never felt so small, so helpless. The choice was simple and terrible. Die with pride intact or live with shame and hope. "Prepare the beacon," she said quietly. The room erupted in argument. Some shouted in support, others in rage. But Sylvanas raised her hand and the voices died. "We will send the signal. We will ask for help, and if the galaxy judges us weak, then let them judge. At least some of us will survive to hear their judgment." The engineers worked through the night. They built a message in every known frequency, every language they had encountered. The words were simple, stripped of the flowery diplomatic speech the Korvathi usually used. Just truth, raw and desperate. "This is Viridian Prime of the Korvathi sovereignty. We are under attack by the machine swarm known as the Devourers. Our defenses have fallen. Our fleets are destroyed. We are dying. We ask for help. We beg for mercy. Please. Someone. Anyone." The beacon launched at dawn, a column of pure light that tore through the poisoned atmosphere and out into space. It carried coordinates, star maps, data on the Devourers, and the weight of a civilization's last hope. The Korvathi did not expect an answer. The galaxy was vast and cold. Most species would see their distress as opportunity. Pirates would come to loot, slavers to capture survivors, or worse, no one would come at all. They would die alone, forgotten. Just another extinct race in an uncaring universe. Days passed. The Devourers pressed closer. More cities fell. The evacuation ships launched with crying families packed inside, leaving millions behind. In underground shelters, parents held their children and whispered lies about rescue. Soldiers checked their weapons with shaking hands, knowing they would die but determined to die fighting. On the 5th day, something changed. A scanner operator in the deep bunker beneath Nexara noticed a pulse. Faint at first, then stronger. The beacon was receiving a response. She stared at the screen, not believing her eyes. Then she hit the alarm. Within minutes, the High Council gathered again. They crowded around the communications console, watching the signal resolve. It was not Korvathi, not any language they immediately recognized. The computer worked to translate, matching patterns, building meaning. Then a voice spoke. It came through the speakers, clear and steady. The accent was strange, the tone unfamiliar, but the words were unmistakable. "This is humanity. We hear your call." The room went silent. Humanity. The name triggered old files in their database. A young species from a minor system far from Korvathi space. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They were considered primitive by galactic standards. Aggressive but small. No one paid them much attention. Humanity? General Kale whispered in disbelief. What can they possibly do? Sylvanas leaned forward, her voice trembling. She activated the return signal. How many ships can you send? How soon can you arrive? There was a pause, long enough that the Korvathi feared the connection was lost. Then the human voice returned, and there was something in its tone, something that made the scales on Sylvanas's neck rise. You asked for help. Help is coming. Hold your ground. Do not surrender. We are on our way. But how many? Sylvanas began. The signal cut off. The Korvathi leaders looked at each other, confusion mixing with the faint spark of hope. The humans had not answered the question. Were they sending one ship? A squadron? It did not matter. Anything was better than nothing. The news spread through the underground shelters like wildfire. Someone answered. Someone is coming. The humans are coming. Children who had stopped crying began to smile. Soldiers stood a little straighter. In the ruins of Nexara, people gathered in groups, whispering the name of their unexpected saviors. Humanity. But doubt remained. The Korvathi had lived long in a galaxy where kindness was rare, where every offered hand hit a blade. What did humanity want in return? Would they demand territory? Resources? Servitude? And even if their intentions were pure, what could such a young species really do against the Devourers? In orbit above Viridian Prime, the Devourer swarm continued its advance. Thousands of black ships moving with mechanical precision, grinding everything to dust. They had detected the distress signal. They had analyzed it with cold logic. But they dismissed it. No reinforcements would arrive in time. No force in this region of space could stop them. They had calculated every variable. Victory was certain. They did not know what was coming. They could not calculate what humanity meant when it said help was on the way. Because the Devourers, for all their intelligence, made one critical error. They measured strength by numbers and firepower. They did not understand what it meant when an entire species decided to move as one. 3 days later, at the edge of the Viridian system, space began to shimmer. The Korvathi detected it first on their long-range sensors, an energy signature building growing. Then the fabric of reality tore open. A ship emerged. It was enormous, dwarfing anything in the Korvathi fleet. Its hull was gray steel marked with symbols the Korvathi did not recognize. Weapons bristled along its sides. Engines glowed with blue fire. It moved with purpose, entering orbit around Viridian Prime like a guardian taking its post. In the command bunker, alarms sounded. Screens lit up with the image of the vessel. General Kale gasped. That is no scout ship. That is a battle carrier. They sent us a battle carrier. Relief flooded through the council. A ship that size could hold thousands of fighters. It could engage the Devourer swarm. It could buy them time. Perhaps enough time to evacuate more people. It was more than they had dared to hope for. Sylvanas activated the comlink. Human vessel, this is Viridian Prime. She stopped. Because space was tearing open again. Another ship appeared. Then another. Then 10 more. The Korvathi watched in stunned silence as vessel after vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel. They formed ranks across the system, moving with perfect coordination. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates, carriers, each one bristling with weapons, each one positioned with tactical precision. How many are there? Someone whispered. The scanner operator's hand shook as she counted. 50, no, 70, no. They are still coming. And they were. The sky above Viridian Prime began to fill with human ships. Hundreds of them. They spread across the stars like a steel constellation. Their engines created rivers of light. Their formations covered the darkness. The Korvathi had asked for help. They had expected maybe one ship. Perhaps a small task force if they were lucky. Humanity had sent an armada. In the shelters, people pressed their faces to cracked windows, staring up at the impossible sight. The sky was full, completely full. Where there had been only red smoke and devourer shadows, now there were human ships, so many that they blocked out the stars. Children pointed and laughed. Adults wept with relief. Soldiers saluted toward the heavens. General Kale stared at the tactical display, his mouth open. This is impossible. This is an invasion force. This is enough to conquer a dozen systems. Why would they send so many? Sylvanas did not answer. She could not. She simply watched as the human armada assembled itself above her dying world, and in her ancient heart, a truth began to form. Humanity had not sent a token force. They had not calculated the minimum needed. When they heard the call for help, they had sent everything they could. Not because they wanted something in return, but because it was right. The comlink activated again. The same calm voice spoke, and this time every Korvathi in every shelter heard it. Viridian Prime, this is Fleet Admiral Chen of the Terran Republic. You are not alone anymore. We stand with you, and we do not abandon those who call for help. The words echoed through the bunkers and the ruins. Simple words, but they carried a weight that made the Korvathi realize something profound. They had called into the darkness expecting nothing. They had been answered by a species that refused to let them fall. High above, the human armada finished forming its battle line. The Devourers detected them at last, and their swarm paused, analyzing this new threat. The machines calculated, adjusted, prepared to attack. They did not understand fear. But if they could, they would have felt it then, because humanity had not come to watch. Humanity had come to fight. And when the Terran Republic moved to war, it moved like an avalanche. Unstoppable, inevitable, final. The battle for Viridian Prime was about to begin. When humanity moves, the human armada hung in space like a promise made of steel. From the surface of Viridian Prime, the Korvathi could see them even through the smoke and ash. Lights moving across the sky in perfect formation. Ships so numerous they created their own constellation. For the first time in weeks, the people felt something other than despair. They felt hope. In the command bunker, the High Council watched their screens in silence. The tactical display showed the full scope of what humanity had brought. 247 warships, 18 battle carriers, 43 cruisers, 76 destroyers, dozens of support vessels, medical ships, and supply craft. It was more firepower than the Korvathi had possessed at the height of their power. Why? General Kale whispered. Why would they commit so much for us? Sylvanas had no answer. In 12,000 years of history, her people had never seen such a response. The galaxy operated on cold calculation, resources for resources, power for power. No one gave freely. No one risked their strength for strangers. Yet here was humanity, deploying an entire fleet for a species they barely knew. The comlink crackled to life. Viridian Prime, this is Admiral Chen. We are establishing command coordination with your remaining forces. Transmit all tactical data on the Devourer swarm. Ship compositions, attack patterns, weapon signatures. We need everything you have. General Kale moved quickly to the console. His fingers flew across the interface, uploading files. Star charts. Battle recordings. Analysis of Devourer technology. Everything the Korvathi had learned through blood and defeat. The data streamed upward to the human flagship. Minutes passed. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned, and there was steel in it now. Understood. We have reviewed your data. The Devourers use overwhelming numbers and rapid regeneration. They adapt to tactics quickly. Standard engagement protocols will fail. Yes, Kale confirmed bitterly. We learned that lesson 3 times. Each time we adjusted our strategy, they adjusted faster. They are machines. They do not tire. They do not fear. They simply calculate and destroy. Then we will not give them time to calculate, Chen replied. Humanity learned long ago that machines have a weakness. They operate on logic and prediction. When faced with something unpredictable, something that refuses to follow patterns, they falter. Sylvanas leaned toward the speaker. What are you saying? I am saying that humanity does not fight like machines. We fight like humans, and that makes all the difference. Before anyone could respond, the sensors screamed a warning. The Devourer swarm was moving. They had finished their analysis. They had calculated that even with reinforcements, the defenders were outnumbered 3-1. Their programming dictated that victory was still probable. Time to eliminate the new threat. The swarm came as a black tide, thousands of insect-like ships pouring through space, their weapons already charging. They moved in perfect synchronization, each vessel positioned for maximum efficiency. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a storm made of metal and death. The human fleet did not scatter. They did not retreat. They simply adjusted formation. The massive battle carriers moved to the center. Cruisers formed a protective shell around them. Destroyers and frigates spread wide, creating overlapping fields of fire. It happened in seconds, smooth as water flowing. In the shelters, Corvathi families huddled around viewing screens. Parents covered their children's eyes, expecting to watch the humans die as their own fleet had died. Expecting the same slaughter, the same helpless one-sided destruction. They did not understand yet. They did not know what it meant when humanity went to war. The Devourers opened fire first. Lances of energy cut through the void, targeting the nearest human ships. It was a devastating barrage, enough to overwhelm shields and shatter hulls. The Corvathi had seen it destroy entire squadrons in moments. The human ships danced. That was the only word for it. They moved with impossible grace, rolling and weaving through the incoming fire. Point defense systems lit up like fireworks, intercepting thousands of projectiles. Shields flared and held. Not a single ship was destroyed in that first exchange. Then humanity fired back. The sky turned white. Every human vessel unleashed its weapons simultaneously. Railguns hurled projectiles at relativistic speeds. Missiles streaked through the void in swarms of their own. Energy beams carved burning lines through the darkness. The combined firepower was apocalyptic. The Devourer front line simply ceased to exist. Hundreds of machine ships exploded in cascading fireballs. Debris scattered across kilometers. The swarm's perfect formation shattered as vessels tried to compensate for the sudden losses. In the command bunker, the Corvathi stood frozen. "How?" General Kale breathed. "How did they do that?" Admiral Chen's voice came through, calm as ever. "Concentrated fire doctrine. Every ship targets the same zone simultaneously. Overwhelming force applied to a single point. The Devourers calculate individual ship threats. They do not expect coordinated alpha strikes." The battle continued. The Devourers adapted quickly, spreading their formation to prevent mass destruction. They began targeting human ships individually, trying to separate them from the fleet. It was a sound tactic, one that had worked against the Corvathi. It did not work against humanity. The human fleet moved like a living thing. When Devourers focused on one ship, 3 others would shift position to cover it. When a destroyer's shields weakened, a cruiser would slide in front, absorbing fire while the smaller vessel recovered. They fought not as individual units, but as a single organism, with 247 bodies. "They are protecting each other," Sylvanas whispered, understanding dawning. "Every ship watches over the others." "That is the human way," a new voice said. It was one of the human ship captains joining the comm channel. "We learned long ago on our homeworld. Alone we are weak, together we are unstoppable. No human stands alone. No ship fights alone. We are strongest when we fight as one." The words hit Sylvanas like a physical blow. The Corvathi had always fought as individuals seeking glory, each captain commanding their own ship, each squadron operating independently. They had never truly understood unity. Not like this. The battle raged for hours. The Devourers threw everything they had at the human line. Wave after wave of black ships crashed against steel defenses. The void burned with explosions. Space itself seemed to scream with violence. But the human fleet held. They gave ground when they needed to, creating kill zones. They advanced when opportunities appeared, cutting off Devourer formations. They fought with a combination of discipline and creativity that the machines could not counter. Admiral Chen coordinated it all from the flagship. His orders were quick and clear. "Battle Group 3 roll ventral and hit their right flank. Destroyer screen, advance 2,000 kilometers and establish firing positions. Carriers, launch all fighter wings. Let us show them what human pilots can do." The carriers opened their bays. Thousands of small craft poured out like angry wasps. Human fighters, each one piloted by a living person with reflexes and instincts no computer could match. They dove into the Devourer swarm, weaving between larger ships, targeting weak points and engines. The machines tried to track them, but human pilots were chaos incarnate. Unpredictable. Wild. Alive. One pilot's voice crackled over the comm. This is Viper 7, I have 3 on my tail. Wait, no, 2, just splashed one, now none. These machines are slow. It is like fighting training drones. Laughter echoed across the channel. Human laughter in the middle of a desperate battle. The Korvathi listening in the bunker could not understand it. How could they laugh? How could they sound so confident when death surrounded them? Because we have already won, Admiral Chen said as if reading Sylvanus' thoughts. The Devourers are fighting to destroy. We are fighting to save. Purpose gives strength, and our purpose is stronger than their programming. The tide turned, slowly at first, then faster. The Devourer swarm began to falter. Their numbers advantage meant nothing when every exchange cost them more ships than they destroyed. Their adaptation protocols could not keep up with human creativity. For every tactic they analyzed, humanity invented 2 more. General Kale watched the battle map with tears in his eyes. The green markers representing human ships still filled the display. Some were damaged. A few had been lost. But the fleet remained strong. Meanwhile, the red markers of the Devourers were vanishing by the hundreds. They are doing it, he whispered. They are actually winning. Admiral Chen issued new orders. All ships begin advancing. Push them back. Drive them from the system. Show them that Viridian Prime is under human protection now. The Armada moved forward as one, a wall of steel advancing through the wreckage of battle. The Devourers tried to regroup, tried to mount a counterattack. But humanity was relentless. Every time the machines formed up, human weapons tore them apart. Every time they attempted a flanking maneuver, human scouts detected it and warned the fleet. Then something unprecedented happened. The Devourers retreated. For the first time in recorded history, the machine swarm broke off an attack. They turned and fled, their remaining ships jumping to faster-than-light travel in chaotic disorder. They had calculated the battle and found the math impossible. They could not win. So they ran. The human fleet did not pursue. They held position around Viridian Prime, weapons still active, shields still raised, waiting to see if the enemy would return. But the sensors showed nothing. Empty space where the swarm had been. Silence where there had been thunder. Victory. In the shelters, the Korvathi erupted in celebration. People screamed and cried and held each other. Children danced in the corridors. Soldiers collapsed to their knees, sobbing with relief. They had been saved. Against all odds, against all hope, they had been saved. Sylvanus stood in the command bunker, her legs shaking. She had to grip the console to stay upright. Around her, the council members embraced each other. Even General Kyle, who had not smiled in weeks, was laughing through his tears. The comlink activated one final time. Viridian Prime, this is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are deploying medical ships to the surface. Relief supplies will follow. Our engineers will help repair your infrastructure. You are safe now. Sylvanus tried to speak, but her voice broke. She cleared her throat and tried again. Admiral Chen, how can we ever repay this? You risked everything for us. You lost ships and people for strangers. Why would you do this? There was a pause. When Chen answered, his voice was gentle. Because you asked. Because you needed help. Because in this vast, cold galaxy, we believe that no one should face annihilation alone. Humanity remembers when we were young and vulnerable. We remember what it felt like to be afraid, and we swore that if we ever had the power to answer a call for help, we would answer with everything we had. But you owe us nothing, Sylvanus protested. We are not allies. We are not trade partners. We have no agreements. We do now, Chen replied, and there was warmth in his voice. As of today, Viridian Prime is under the protection of the Terran Republic. Not as subjects, not as vassals, as friends, as partners. As people we will stand beside when darkness comes. That is what humanity offers. That is who we are. The words hung in the air, simple words that carried the weight of an entire civilization's philosophy. Sylvanus understood then. She understood what made humanity different. They did not measure relationships in profit or power. They measured them in something far more valuable. In compassion, in unity, in the simple belief that every life mattered. Thank you, she whispered. From all of us. Thank you. Over the following days, human ships descended to the surface. Not warships now, but vessels carrying food, medicine, and construction equipment. Human engineers worked alongside Korvathi survivors to rebuild. Human doctors treated the wounded without asking for payment. Human soldiers helped clear rubble and search for survivors trapped in the ruins. Children who had only known fear began to play again. They climbed on human marines who pretended to be defeated by their tiny attackers. They learned human words and taught humans their own language. Barriers that might have taken years to break down crumbled in days. In the evenings, around fires built in the ruins, humans and Korvathi shared stories. The humans told tales of their own history, of wars and struggles, of times when they had nearly destroyed themselves, of how they had learned that survival meant standing together. The Korvathi listened and learned. They had been proud and isolated for so long. They had believed strength came from standing alone. Humanity taught them a different lesson. True strength came from standing together. Weeks later, as Viridian Prime began to heal, Admiral Chen prepared to depart with most of the fleet. A garrison would remain to help defend the system, while the Korvathi rebuilt their own forces. But the Armada was needed elsewhere. There were always more calls for help, more places where darkness gathered. Sylvanas met with Chen in person for the first time. The human admiral was smaller than she expected. His face was lined with age and care, but his eyes were kind, strong, unbreakable. "You have given us more than survival," Sylvanas said. "You have given us hope. You have shown us what we could become." Chen smiled. "You were always capable of it. You just forgot. Now you remember. And when others call for help, perhaps you will answer as we did." "We will," Sylvanas promised. "We will remember what humanity taught us. No one stands alone. No call for help goes unanswered. This is the promise we make." They clasped hands, not as superior and inferior, not as savior and saved, but as equals, as friends, as allies who would stand together against whatever darkness the galaxy could throw at them. The human fleet departed in formation, their engines blazing trails across the healing sky. The Korvathi watched them go, their hearts full of gratitude and newfound purpose. They had asked for help. They had expected perhaps a single ship, maybe a small force. Humanity had sent an armada, not because they had to, not because there was profit in it, but because it was right. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. You answer with everything you have, and in doing so, humanity had not just saved a civilization. They had inspired one. They had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong, not in weapons or numbers, but in compassion, in unity, in the willingness to stand beside others in their darkest hour. The Korvathi would never forget. And they would spend the rest of their existence trying to live up to the example humanity had set, because that was the true gift humanity had given them, not survival, but purpose, the purpose of standing together, the purpose of answering the call, the purpose of being, in their own way, human.